Welcome back to my channel, friends. Welcome back to camp. It's been a minute. We're out here at the old truck camper testing out some winter gear. It's not quite cool yet. I mean, the nights are getting down to like 40s and 50s. So with the anticipation of the GFC, the new camper arriving, and as you guys know, if you've been keeping up with the channel, I have intentions to do some long-term travel out on the road in it, which will involve having some colder weather. And this is a diesel heater by BerAro. I'm sure many of you, if you frequent the YouTubes watching truck camping and van life stuff, you're familiar with a diesel heater. This is by a company named BerAro, and they sent this out to me to, whoa, holy wasps. They sent this out to me to test it out, see how it works for my build and my application. I will say it took a little bit of trial and error. These things are kind of just meant to be universal heaters for all sorts of situations, whether that's a truck camper, a van. Whoa, golly, these wasps. Setting it up as alternate heat inside of your house. So it's got loads of different applications, and therefore they can't really build it to be specifically for one thing and sell it. Otherwise, they'd have to have a ton of different versions. So this is the diesel heater. You've obviously got your control panel up front here. The diesel heater itself, the heating mechanism, is inside here with the diesel tank on top of it, and then it's all encased in this red shell. Now, let me show you guys what I had to do. Out of the box, you pretty much just get this red whole assembly, the entire assembly here in red, with some wires coming out of it. They do give you the exhaust pipe, which you see running out from underneath it here. That's something that you can easily set up. They provide you with a bunch of hose clamps to install all these things. I'll show you the outlet hose here in a second. This is going to be where the heat comes out of the heat exchanger and blows hot air. So something I had to do was add these, I think it's 2x2 blocks underneath. So on both sides of the legs, I basically added these 2x2 blocks that are about 6 inches in width, screwed them into the base of the diesel heater, and what that did was raise the diesel heater off of whatever surface it's sitting on enough for this exhaust to be up and out of the ground. So this thing gets pretty hot. So you needed to add a little bit of elevation here to keep it away from touching the surface of whatever it's sitting on. So let me kind of explain one other key point to this. On the back side here, obviously you've got some wiring, and I'll touch on that. You've got the air intake with the air filter up top here. So it runs in and underneath this little hole, and then runs kind of alongside the exhaust running back into the diesel heater. So pretty simple, just wired that hose up. This all came with the diesel heater, so everything kind of everything you need to get it running, besides actual diesel fuel, is included in the kit. So I just zip tied it through a couple of these holes to keep it up and out of the way, so it's not like sitting on the ground. Now, when you get this device, it's going to have a positive and a negative wire coming out of the back of this. And that is what I kind of mean by it being universal. So it basically gives you the option to splice it into whatever you're going to be, however you're going to be wiring it. Now, obviously, I don't know if you guys can see that, but I've got the Anker Solix power station in the back there. And that was my intention, was to run it off of that. I don't want to have a special battery basically just to run this diesel heater. So when I got the kit, obviously we had red and black wire coming off. I bought a little AC or like cigarette plug adapter to put into the AC port on the power bank. However, when these things turn on initially, they pull quite a bit of power. They pull upwards to like 100 to 150 watts, and that is more than about 10 amps. It's actually closer to probably 12 or 13 amps. So my issue was the Solix, the power station back there, the cigarette port only runs up to 10 amps. So as soon as you turn this thing on and the glow plug starts heating up, which is what's pulling all that energy, it auto shuts off. Or actually the Solix auto shut off because it was being asked to pull more power than it's safely set up to do. So I had to do a little research online, found a bunch of people with a similar issue that wanted to run their diesel heater off of their Anker Solix, or honestly it goes for like Jackery and all the power stations. Most of them are 10 amps out of that cigarette fuse. So what I did was I bought this device. It's a 12 volt, 250 watt inverter. Inverter might not be the right name for that, but I'll include this down in the description for where I got it. And it was, it was like 40 bucks to get this, but what this allowed me to do was splice the wires into this, and then off of that, it goes to your normal household 3-prong plug, which then can plug into the Anker Solix, and those ports on it have a lot more capacity for power. So I was finally able to get this thing running. That was a big kind of hurdle. It took me a little bit to figure out how to actually do it, but it was basically just getting the correct wiring set up and this device here to run it into the correct port on the Anker Solix. So if you guys are running into that issue with like your Jackery, your Anker device, you name it, whatever power station, this might be a good alternative for you. Otherwise, you could always run it into like a deep cycle battery, something along those lines. Before I show you the whole setup of this thing, I want to point out something kind of cool. You've got these gauges on the housing itself that show you where your diesel is. So right now we're sitting pretty much full. I don't know, you probably won't be able to see that, but on camera at least, but I can see the diesel line is right up there at 100% or 5 liters. So you can easily see it you don't have to pull this whole thing off or take the cap off to check how much diesel you have. You can monitor it from the outside here, and these holes and gauges are on both sides of the diesel heater. So no matter which orientation you have it set up with, you can see it from both sides, which I think is pretty handy. So for now, at least, this is the bag I keep all of the extra parts in. I'll show you what this is in a moment. You get this device, which basically you can spin this vent to kind of point which way you want the hot air to go. Whoops, I kind of unscrewed it there. But you can spin it and you can set how you want the air to blow, whether that's up, down, side, side to side. So that's cool. You also need some sort of a hose to run it from the diesel heater up into your tent, your house, your truck camper, whatever it may be. And in the kit, it comes with this length here, which is expandable, but it's not nearly as long as this. So what I did was take that initial piece, got a easy tie hose clamp, which is gonna sit on the diesel heater. I just used another hose clamp here to adhere this piece to this piece, and this is just 3-inch dryer hose from Lowe's. So that expands a lot farther. And then on this end, I have another easy clamp to tighten this. I wanted these easier clamps so that way I didn't have to remember to bring like an 8 mil to actually tighten this down. I can just easily do it with my fingers. Makes life a little bit simpler. Now, this device is a little homemade. So what I did here was, because I was trying to think about how I wanted to run the diesel heater into the truck. And I'm not taking credit for this. I saw this elsewhere online, but this is kind of my own version of it. So running it in through one of the side windows, on my camper shell, I've got sliding windows on either side. So I basically took a piece of cardboard, opened the window, made a trim or an outline of where that window opening is. I traced it onto this plexiglass. I cut the plexiglass out, and then I cut a 3-inch hole to add this piece, which is a 3-inch to 4-inch adapter. So it goes 3-inch here and then 4-inch here. And the point of that is this 3-inch hose is going to sit on here and get clamped down. And then this will be the inside. Now I would have liked to have, and maybe I can still figure it out, how to mount this to it, but honestly, I'm only going to be using this setup with this camper shell for maybe another month. And then the GFC will be here, and I'll have to figure out a totally different way to do this. So for now, I wanted to showcase this because I think if you have a truck camper like mine with a fiberglass shell and you have sliding windows, this is a kind of a cool way to do it without having to drill a hole in your fiberglass shell. You don't have to drill a hole in your truck to run it up through. So just an easy way, if you have sliding windows, to get your diesel heat into the actual camper. So let me show you how this all gets set up. So as you can see, I've already opened the window, but you would open this window. I normally have screen here, so I took it out on just this side. The other side still opens and has screen, but I took the screen out of this side for this reason. So obviously it's winter months, I'm not gonna have too many bug issues, so I don't mind taking the screen out of one. If I want, I can still open the screen on the other side and have some bug-free air, I suppose. But this just sits right in the track. I added this little bit of leftover trim molding I had. You don't really need it, but I just thought it'd be a nice use for it. So I just basically cut this edge to match this edge here. It slides in kind of somewhat snug enough at least. And then what I do is I take the glass and I slide it back over and meet the plexiglass, and it kind of just butts up against there. It's not a perfect science. I didn't spend a whole lot of time getting the angles perfect. So it's not, if I was going to use this truck camper for a long time and use this setup, I'd probably do this. I'd take a lot more time with it and make it fit a little bit more nice, but that's the whole thing there. So now what we would do is we take this end of our diesel heat hose, or where our heat comes into the camper shell, and slide that onto there. And then we just clamp this on so it stays put. Doesn't need to go too strong on there or too tight. So just enough to keep it from sliding off. The wind's not going to pull it off, so that'll work. And so we grab the other end of our hose, like so. And this is going to get attached to the portion of the diesel heater where the heat actually comes out. So you basically the same thing. You're just going to push it onto its, I guess that would be the male end of it. And then you tighten down your hose clamp, but I think I'm actually a little bit possibly twisted up here. So one thing I guess with the diesel heater, and I'm not speaking so much from experience, but I did a ton of research on this stuff before I started using this, is you don't want an extreme angle right off of the diesel heater. So that's kind of why I decided to keep this section of black hose here, because it's a lot more rigid and it actually allows for the fan to not have to work so hard to initially push the heat out. I'm sure this angle here probably isn't ideal, but let me just go ahead and get this tightened on and then we can start to adjust things. Okay, so that's tight enough. And now this, like I said, is flexible as, whoop, I guess it wasn't tight enough. Maybe this will be easier to do before I tighten it. Obviously, if you guys can't tell, I haven't used this a lot, so I'm figuring out all the quirks kind of as I go. But if we bend this a little bit to not make that angle at the end so harsh, hopefully now we can cinch this back onto here, tighten it down, and there we go. Now, one thing I want to mention is I've seen guys who run their diesel heater, they buy those, it's kind of like either a step or a little table, metal table you can add off of. It sits on the top of the wheel or the tire, and the diesel heater would sit on top of that little bench that comes off of it. The reason I don't want to do that, and I want to have the diesel heater further away from the vehicle, is if this thing ever has an issue, lights on fire, ignites in any way, I want to have at least a little bit of space before it's lighting my truck on fire. And if I'm sleeping inside, you can imagine how that would not end so well. So I think the better route is to not have this on the vehicle. I mean, obviously people mount these things inside of their vans. That's up for discussion. But at least for me, I'm not familiar enough with these. Maybe 2 years of successful use with this, I might be more open to doing something like the tire mount. But for now, I'm going to build up my trust with it by mounting it on the ground a little bit away from the vehicle. Now, the other issue I have here, and I haven't tested this enough yet, but this hose gets pretty hot. And what I don't want is this right here. I don't want it sitting on the paint because I'm a little worried that it's going to not burn through or anything. Sorry if you guys can't see that, but I don't want it touching like the tire here. Tire's rubber. This is hot metal. You get where I'm going with this. So I try and like pull this enough away so that way it's not touching the tire and it's not touching the truck, and it goes right into that, basically that plexiglass window that I made. And with all camping stuff, this is kind of the fun part, is you just have to try it out, bring it out to camp and actually test things out and see how they go together. I didn't really think about how I would get the cable to power this thing up into the truck. So coming off the backside, and I did when I basically, what's the word? I I didn't even solder. I just butt connected the wiring coming out of the diesel heater to that device I showed you guys, that kind of inverter or converter, if you will. And I gave it a lot of extra cable because I wasn't sure where this thing was going to be mounted exactly, and I wanted to have a lot of cable to run it up. So I'm using like 12 gauge wire, 2 of them obviously power ground, running in between the camper glass and the plexiglass. Now, again, figuring this out on the fly, maybe not ideal because it kind of renders this whole section useless because now it's not touching, whereas before this was wedging this snug in there. So I think if I were to do this differently, I might make a little cutout here, right there, to allow this wire harness to go through and into the camper shell, and then this glass would then continue to butt up against the plexi. But like I said, figuring it out on the fly, trial and error. I also picked up this little stool. I got real tired of having to jump up onto the truck. I think if you guys have watched that one video where I crushed my manly jewels on the tailgate, I don't want to do that again. So now I have this little step, helps me get up into the truck without having to try so hard. So now we have this converter that runs in the window. We'll leave it on the wheel well like so, and take our house prong or house plug, whatever you want to call it. And the Solex has 6 of these, so we'll plug that into there, fire it up. So now the diesel heater should have power. And this is what that looks like from the inside of the camper shell. So you've got your hose coming in there through the plexiglass, and I think it's going to work at least for the next month. Like I said, if I were to do this different, I'd spend a lot more time building this, cut out the little spot for the cable to come in through, so that way this could actually butt up against it. But honestly, getting a little bit of fresh air in here, probably not the end of the world either. We should be able to see, yes, the diesel heater is on and functioning. So the setup here, these diesel heaters are all very similar as far as their menu settings, and I'm not a master at this yet. But what I've realized is once it's powered on, you kind of hit OK, 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 hit OK. There we go. That's what I want, is the power 12. So you can adjust, hold on, again, not a pro here, but you've got a whole bunch of settings, and the manual kind of tells you how to use it. But to turn the actual diesel heater on is holding the power button. So now the power button's on. Hopefully you can see that. But there's a bunch of different animations on this. So you can see that right now it is pumping in the fan. The glow plug, it's hard to show you guys, it's a little red symbol there, is on. So right now, it's probably pulling a lot of watts. So if you guys can see that, it's pulling 104, it was 99 there for a second, 99 watts. And that basically is the max amount, 123. It's going to be pulling in order to turn this diesel heater on. So how this works is the fan turns on, you'll see the glow plug sign come on, and that is heating up the system. And once it's heated up, the glow plug will turn off, and this thing will only be pulling maybe 5 watts. Probably can't hear it, but I just heard the fuel pump start clicking. That's just obviously pumping diesel through the system. And now this thing, I can start to smell it, is going to start firing up and getting warm. While this thing is heating up, a couple things I want to mention is the first time you use this, attach your intake hose, even the one you're going to extend it with, attach obviously your exhaust pipe, and let it run for a solid like 2 hours on high heat. That way it burns off anything that, anything in the metals that might be toxic. When I first fired this thing up, a whole bunch of gnarly looking exhaust came out. So you want to run this thing not into your camper, just run it outside with plenty of ventilation, run it for like 2 hours on high, and then everything will start to kind of heat up and get rid of any of the, the toxins that are sitting on it, like right there. If you guys can see that, I spilled a little diesel earlier, so that's probably diesel sitting on the outside of the exhaust. So I'm obviously just gonna let this run for a little bit, let it heat up and burn that off. I've got the camper shell totally opened up. I'm not letting any of the fumes sit in there. I've also got my carbon monoxide detector, which I know works. We'll just double check it. Wait, hold on. So carbon monoxide detector is working. I'm gonna leave this in the truck. Okay, I got it. So diesel heat is a little different than like the buddy heater that I used to have in here. Diesel heat is very dry, and as opposed to the Mr. Buddy heater, which is just a combustion device sitting, how I used it was sitting inside the truck. It was putting out heat, but it was also burning, and I guess you could call that exhausting in the truck as well. So that's why people worry about the carbon monoxide building up, because you have that whole unit inside. With these, the exhaust is being pumped outside, and only the hot air is being pushed into the camper. Now, maybe it's not perfect science, and that's why I still recommend using a carbon monoxide detector, especially if you're going to be using this while you sleep, but definitely a more safe option, I would say, than something like the Mr. Buddy heater. The other thing is, in these tight spaces, I ran out of safe space to put the Mr. Buddy heater. Like, it would have to be sitting on the floor with nothing in front of it or around it, and if it was too close, I couldn't have it on like a little shelf, because the heat goes up and it would start to get really hot up by the fabric on the inside of the camper shell. So I think this is going to be a way, way, way better route. Now this is already pumping out nice hot air. So something like this, I have it on high right now, but I'll obviously turn this and probably use it primarily on low. It's going to heat up this camper shell in no time at all. And again, with it being dry heat, it's really nice. So that way, if it's raining and everything's damp in here, just moisture in the air, it's going to dry everything out, as opposed to a propane heat like the Mr. Buddy heater, which is, it builds up a lot of condensation. So this, much like a wood burning stove, is dry heat. And if we look at the Anker Solix right now, it's only pulling 32 watts. It is still on high. If I put this down to low on the diesel heater, it's going to be pulling about 5 watts. Sometimes it's pulling such little power that it doesn't even recognize any power is being pulled from it, which is great. I'm running my fridge off of this. I'm running the diesel heater off of this. And right now, if I weren't to change anything, this thing will last for another 18 hours, 19 hours. And so imagine if I had this on low, this power bank is going to be able to run my fridge and the diesel heater constantly for probably a day and a half, 2 days. So if we come back over here, we can bump this down to level 1. There's 6 levels, at least in the setting system that I'm using. So 1 being the lowest, 6 being the highest. And it's going to take a second to kind of ramp down from high to low. But once it does, we'll check the Anker Solix and see how much power it's pulling. Now the diesel heater is successfully on low. It's much more quiet, uses next to no diesel fuel at all. I've watched tests on this, and guys run this on low continuously on, I think it holds, I'll have to double check. I think it's like 5 liters on there of diesel fuel, and you can run this thing on low for like 30 hours. And right now it's pulling next to nothing. It doesn't even register on here that it's pulling any wattage, and we're pulling in 6 watts of solar. So it's actually recharging, even though I've got my diesel heater running and my fridge running off of the power bank. Even though it's about, I don't know, high 60s out right now, maybe even into the lower 70s, I'm going to let this diesel heater just run on low for the remainder of this camping trip. I'm doing a 1-night solo out here. I'm just going to let it kind of run and monitor how much fuel it uses and how much battery it uses. Obviously, later when I get into the truck, I think it's supposed to get down into maybe the high 40s tonight, so it's not terribly cold. And this diesel heater is going to heat it up really quickly, so I'll probably sleep with the 2 windows besides this one open in the truck just to kind of keep cooler, fresh air coming in. But the point of this is to test it out before I actually need it in the winter and make sure everything's going to work, the setup's going to work. Again, this is going to change once I get the GFC and get rid of this fiberglass shell. But for now, it's a good test to make sure I have enough power to supply this thing. And I want to see how much diesel it's going to use, because I don't want to have to carry a ton of diesel. I'd like to have one jerry can, which should last me multiple days. I actually want to break out. I think I have somewhere in here, maybe in this guy. Oh, maybe it's in the lower section. I want to pull out my thermometer, my temp gauge, to see what the temps are going to be like in here with the diesel heater running, and then we can also set it outside later and see, or I guess I can just check my phone to see what the actual temp is outside. Here it is. So we'll grab our temp gauge here. It's currently reading 72 degrees. So we'll just set that on the Bouge RV fridge, and we'll let that just chill. And we'll close this up. If you guys are new here, I just want to do a quick rundown. This is my 1998 Toyota Tacoma extended cab, 4-wheel drive, 5-speed. Only thing it really didn't come with, it came with a sunroof, didn't come with a rear locker, so I'm open, and it's on 33-inch tires. I've got a roof rack on there with a solar panel that's 100 watts. I've got some recovery boards on that side, and then I recently just added these kind of original, they're not Toyota OEM, but they're original colored markers. So these are the turn signals down on the bottom of the bumper, the orange, and before I had clear on there. And I really want to keep this truck looking like it rolled off the lot. I don't want to add any like aftermarket looking stuff necessarily. Obviously I have off-road lights here, but I want to keep it looking like it came off the factory line, if you may. So I like the orange, one, because it is factory, 2, it ties into the off-road lights, and I think gives the front end a much more uniform look. And I don't know, the orange just looks very 90s Toyota to me, so I really love it. And that was a really cheap upgrade. I think Rock Auto for like $4 a pop to get these orange markers. So the roof rack is an Eno roof rack, and I'm going to have to change it up, because once the GFC gets here, it's not going to fit, because the GFC, the Go Fast Camper, basically is going to replace this shell, but it also has an overhang up here, which is what the actual pop tent is a part of, and that comes to about the back of this door. So I'm going to have to figure out how to either shrink this, roof rack, or I may not even be able to use it at all. We'll find out once I get the GFC, but I'm going to have to kind of move things around. The truck's going to change a little bit, but I just, if you guys are with me on this channel a lot, I don't love this camper shell, although it ties into the truck perfectly with the paint match. It's made for this truck, so it's sized perfectly. I just hate like this angle right here, and it's just, I don't like that it's tallest in the rear. And the GSC is a lot more square, a lot more boxy looking, and it has the overhang, so it's going to bring the whole top of the level of the truck a little bit further forward. And I just think it's going to look a lot more rugged and honestly just cool, for lack of better terms. I feel like this just, it's never made me like, I never look at this truck and I'm like, wow, that camper shell fills my bucket. That just looks so awesome. I don't love it. So it's going to get sold once I know the GFC is going to work out, and moving on to bigger and better things. Diesel heater's been running for probably half an hour. See what the temps are at. It is currently 79 degrees inside the camper shell, 71% humidity. So definitely heating it up, but I've got the windows cracked and opened on the other side. So I'm trying to I want to be able to sleep comfortably without living in a sauna, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, obviously this is meant for more like sub 30 degree temps, maybe like low 40s. But for now, I think I actually want to get camp set up. I want to go ahead and make the bed, get the camp chair out. Gonna have a fire later. And tonight I'm doing a meal that I was introduced to when I was doing some filming work down in Tucson, Arizona. I was filming with the VP of Border Patrol down there, and he took us to one of the best Mexican spots I've ever been to, and he said, you guys have to try what's called a Sonoran hot dog. So tonight, making some Sonoran hot dogs. It's basically hot dogs wrapped in bacon. You cook them, you top them with like onion, tomato, condiments, pinto beans, and then I've got some kind of like hot yellow peppers that I'm going to grill to eat on the side with them. And then all that in a bun. I think it's a special bun that they actually are supposed to be in, but I picked what looked good at the grocery store. So tonight, Sonoran hot dogs, campfire, testing out this diesel heater. It's just going to be a nice chill fall camp trip. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you guys let me know how you're feeling about it in the comments. Let me know if you have some diesel heater experience, what you guys think of like how the truck looks right now with the modifications to like the lights, the roof rack, and all that. I'm like, yeah, I know people love this camper shell. I don't, but I'm always curious to hear what you guys think about other aspects of the camper. So I think for now, I'm going to go ahead and break out my camp chair, get that set up, and maybe crack a beer and kind of just chill out for a bit. It's only 4:45 right now, so I've got some time to kill before dinner. Probably do that here in another hour or two. And then, yeah, we'll just see, keep an eye on the diesel heater, see how that goes. And I'm going to go ahead and get camp set up, which means making this bed, getting the mattress all inflated, setting up the blankets, pulling out the camp chair, putting that over by the fire. I'm going to grab a book to read, and I'm going to just simmer down for a bit. Well, we've got the fire ripping, diesel heater's still going. I've had this shut. Let's see what the temp's at. 99 degrees, 31% humidity. So extremely hot, obviously, and it's still probably close to 70 degrees outside. So not really diesel heater appropriate weather, but again, this is a test. 31% humidity, I love to see that. If we can get the inside of the camper nice and dry without condensation, if you're sleeping in the camper shell, you breathing overnight is gonna add condensation. So seeing that nice and dry is exactly what I love about the diesel heater. So we'll just kind of set that aside for now. And I think, put the magnet on there, I think it's time to get cooking on dinner. So for tonight, let me break out the fridge ingredients. Let me see if I can use my trusty old stool here. So for tonight, we're gonna need bacon, I've got a couple different yellow peppers. We've got hot dog buns, hot dogs, and pinto beans. I realize now I forgot to bring an onion or ketchup or mustard. So that is awfully upsetting. However, we will continue on and make do. So ingredients, pretty simple and straightforward. Let me actually move these, put these up here for now so they're out of the way. We got this guy just back on there. Hot dogs. So we're most definitely gonna need the cast iron to cook our peppers and hot dogs on. Probably need plates. I'm gonna pull out the silverware, set that up there. We're gonna need propane for the stove. We're gonna need the stove. If you guys haven't seen my build before, I just did a wooden build out in the back of this Tacoma. So right now I'm pulling everything out of the kitchen. I think we're gonna need what do I wanna cook this on? I'll cook it in a pot. We're gonna need a pot for the beans. I'll just pull the whole thing out. And I think that's about it. So what we should do, I'm gonna cook. I've learned my lesson, so I like to put the stove on this side so that way I can still get access to the drawer, because there's always stuff you forget. Get our cast iron over here, break out a pot for the beans. First things first, we'll get the beans on because that's super easy. Try and get those on a real low temp just to slowly bring them up to temp. And then I think next up, hot dogs are going to be super easy, so that's just going to go on when we're ready. I do have to wrap them in bacon, however. I really wish I remembered the onion, because I'd really love to have onion on my hot dog, but so be it. I'm going to grab the cutting board and the chef knife out of here. Now, I grabbed 2 different peppers. I think this is a Hungarian pepper, and to be honest, I don't even remember what the name of this guy is. I think this is more along the lines of what they properly use to go with a Sonoran hot dog, but I grabbed both because I wanted one. I know the ones that you're supposed to eat with it are a little bit spicy. I didn't know which one was which. So now that I think about it, I don't even need to cut these. They just get grilled on there just like that. I don't even need the knife. I'm getting way ahead of myself here. So really all that we need to do is wrap some hot dogs up with bacon. So I'll grab, I don't know, grab like 3 hot dogs. And we're just gonna grab 1 strip of bacon for each hot dog. Boom. Super easy. I realized that having the diesel heater and keeping the camper shell at 100 degrees is probably a little counterintuitive for the fridge, because obviously then the fridge is going to have to work harder. But that fridge is pretty eco-friendly, or efficient, if you will, so it doesn't really take much to keep it down at temp, so I'm not too worried about it. Next, we'll go ahead and get the cast iron rolling, and we'll toss our bacon wrapped hot dogs in there. That looks delectable. And you know what, while we're at it, I'm gonna move these over a little bit and toss our pepper in there to grill. Just all in as is, should be fine. And then I changed my mind. I'm gonna chop up this guy to add a little crunch to the hot dogs, because the way Sonoran hot dogs, at least how I know them, is you eat the pepper on the side, take a bite of hot dog, take a bite of pepper, so on and so forth. And since I forgot the onion, it actually smells a little spicy. Hopefully we're in luck. Maybe this is something like a banana pepper. Correct me in the comments if you know. But what I'm gonna do is chop this up, and I'll probably cook them down a little bit, just so they're not totally raw pepper. But I'm gonna add this to the hot dog so it gives a little crunch. So a little bit of a variation here. So we'll just kind of cube these up, if you will. There you have it, my friends. My version of Sonoran hot dogs. So we've got bacon wrapped hot dogs on the bun with pinto beans with whatever pepper that is chopped up, a little bit of salt and pepper on the beans, and then Hungarian pepper grilled on both sides. So let's go dig in. All right, as I'm sure you're all wondering, taste test. See how she goes. It's quite messy, that's for sure. Muy bien. Let's check out our Hungarian pepper. Whoa. Not spicy, but it's almost like a grilled bell pepper. So something I totally forgot to have with my dinner, and I picked it up at the store, and it would have been perfect for the Sonoran hot dogs, was my Mandarin Jarritos soda. So better late than never, I guess. Cool addition to this fridge. It's got a bottle cap opener. Anywho, you're a liar if you don't like Jarritos. Another cool thing about this diesel heater is it comes with this key fob. And on this key fob are different buttons. So you've got on, off, up, and down. So I can actually control whether or not it turns on or turns off, and also the power level of it from, say, inside the camper or maybe across camp, which is nice because, you know, you're in the middle of the night, you get too hot, you can shut it off or turn it down, and vice versa in the morning. You know, you shut it off for the night, you wake up, and then you want to turn it on and heat up the camper before you have to jump outside. You just hit the on button and then select the power level you want. So really a cool addition to this thing. It comes with the kit from BerAro. So as always, guys, I'll have a link in the description to this diesel heater as well as a promo code. I want to say it's like $30 off if you act now. And then I think there's also a 15% off. It can't be duplicated, but I think the 15% off will always be good. And then I think right now they're running a special on Amazon for $30 off. So use the link in the description. Pick yourself up a diesel heater if you're in need of one. And let me know how your experience goes with it. But for now, I've got the camper opened up. I'm going to let it kind of air out and come down from that 100 degrees. It's good to know what it can get up to, but I don't need it that hot. So I'm going to go sit by the fire, chill until it's bedtime, and we'll see where the power level's at as well as the gas level or the diesel level on the diesel heater itself. So I will catch you guys in a little bit. I'm in the camper shell now. The diesel heater is still running. It's been going now for about 6.5 hours. So the power bank is still at 74%. It's currently pulling 2 watts. So between the fridge and the diesel heater, it's pulling 2 watts, which is next to nothing. So it would definitely run. If you just ran this on low, I could totally see it running for 30 hours straight. No issues. So honestly, a great viable option for truck camping, tent camping, van life, I guess. You know, I see why people like this, and I'm excited to try to make this fit into the GFC when I get it. Obviously, this would be a great setup for the truck camper, just this plexiglass setup here. I think this is exactly what you would need. It is pretty darn hot in here. Like, I think it got up to 100 at most during the day. Keeping the windows open, which is still pretty hot for at least, I would sleep in like 60 degrees. So we'll see how it goes. We'll check in the morning. And first I want to show you guys where the fuel level is at. So hopefully you guys can see this, but if I put this through here, the fuel level there, I'll kind of shake it, is not even down. It's not even down a full third. It's maybe down a quarter of the way. And it's, again, been running for actually almost 7 hours. So certainly a great option. Really stoked to have this and be able to use it in the winter time. I can think of many times in the past where I've been truck camping in the really, really cold temps, and this would have been so flippin' awesome to have. So I'm going to hit the hay because I'm pretty dang tired. I will see you guys in the morning for coffee, and we'll check in on the power bank, the level of diesel we have left, and we'll see how this thing does over the night. Again, I have windows open, which with this, you really don't need to, but I'm going to, just to keep it appropriate temp and add some airflow, I'm going to keep them open, as well as I've got the carbon monoxide detector in there. So I'll see you guys in the morning. So it just rained for a little bit, and I took this piece of foam and just laid it over, bungeed it over the diesel heater away from the exhaust and the hot pipe here, but I just wanted to keep this dry. And then on this side, keep the air intake dry, which seemed to do the trick. Obviously it's got a dry footprint underneath it, so I think that was a success, but you know, sucks to have to get out of bed and figure this out on the fly. But I don't know, I guess with the diesel heater you have to have a good spot for it, so that way if it does rain, I don't know, you have some sort of coverage, because I don't think this is waterproof. But let me know down in the comments if you guys have messed with these and what your solution is for keeping this out of the rain. I thought about just sticking it underneath the truck, but then this hose here, which is pretty hot, I can't even hold my hand on it. It would be touching the paint of the truck, which I just want to try and avoid. So this was my on-the-fly fix.
All right. Good morning, folks. It is currently 7:50 in the morning. Diesel heater has been running for probably close to about, it's got to be about 16 hours at this point. The power bank is at 44%. Currently pulling borderline no watts between the fridge and the diesel heater, and is just about to start pulling in some solar. So that's pretty good. I could probably run this all day still, and then maybe into the next night if I needed to, assuming I got no solar. But we still got to check what the diesel level is at. So we'll jump out of bed here. So the moment of truth, after using the diesel heater it actually has a timer on the front. Looks like, 16 hours on low. We are still at, I'm going to call that a quarter tank of diesel. You can see if I can get the light better. Yeah, there we go. Quarter tank of diesel. That's not bad at all. Now, before you go and shut these off, it's basically when you shut it off, the glow plug comes back on to burn off any extra carbon, but I like to turn it up and run it on high, so that way it just gets everything nice and hot before you actually shut it down. So I'm gonna let that simmer on level 6, which is high on mine, on the BerAro, and we'll see if we can shut it down here while we're making coffee. So the diesel heater has been running on high now for probably 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead and use the key fob here. Let's see, off would be this guy. Press and hold, and there it goes. Now it's shutting off. And keep in mind that when you turn these off, the glow plug comes back on, so it starts to burn a lot more power even though it's powering down.
and that's to get rid of as much of the carbon buildup as possible. So that's just the shutdown process. It takes probably another 5 minutes for it to actually totally shut down, and the fan keeps running a bit to cool down everything, and that way it's not just shutting down super hot. So I'm gonna go ahead and enjoy my coffee and get ready to hit the road. Well, folks, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of camping, doing a little truck camping with the new winter gear. It turned out to be pretty cold this morning, so the diesel heater was actually really nice to wake up to, and I'm super stoked about how efficient it is power-wise and diesel-wise. So, when the GFC gets here, I just have to fabricate a new way to get basically the heat hose into the actual GFC. So stay tuned for that. If you guys are in the market for a diesel heater, make sure to check out the link in the description along with the promo code. Check out BerAro. And with that being said, folks, I will see you in the next one. Keep elevating, my friends. Adios.